I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes! Good morning, Toledo. Good afternoon, Columbus, and hello to those of you listening on the internet, wherever or whenever you are. This is Joe DeMar, and you are listening to For a Green Future. On For a Green Future, we talk about the environment, we talk about ecology, and we talk about them in terms of the way they're going to benefit you, your health, your happiness, your wallet, because a environmentally sustainable society is also an economically prosperous society. The better your environment is, the better your ecology is in your society, the more resources there are for everyone. And that's a lesson that I think needs to be brought home, because a lot of people think that the environment, that being well off depends on exploiting the environment. A lot of people think prosperity comes from turning healthy forests into piles of sawdust, thereby making lots of money. No, that's something that will get you short-term gain. But really, if you want long-term gain for everyone in the society, you need to have a healthy, productive environment. And so that's one of the things that we talk about on this show, how to get there. Because this is an upbeat show. We're looking at the green future, and we're positive that the green future is coming. And one reason we're positive is because I get a letter from the future every week from my great-great-granddaughter, Marie I. She said, just before I would get up to do the show every Sunday morning, there's this flash of photons next to my bed, and poof, there's a letter from the future. So we'll be reading that later in the show. It's a pretty interesting show. I'm going to be talking for the next 15 minutes or so here, but about a few issues that have come up this past week. And then at 8:15, we open the phone lines. That's 866-240-1065. And what we'll be talking about this week, your favorite eco movies, your favorite environmental movies, movies that you came out of the theater going, wow, that is really cool. That is beautiful. Nature is just amazing. And I've got my personal top 5 eco movies, and you be thinking about yours and give a call. I think you're going to find some of mine a little surprising, and I'm very interested in hearing you and yours. Did you watch a movie that just sort of changed your attitude towards nature? I'm very interested to hear what that movie was and how you liked it and what you thought about it. So that's what we'll be talking about starting at 8:15. Right now, for the next few minutes, though, we're going to be talking about fire and water, because these are two essential elements in ecosystems. I mean, for a long time, through most of the 20th century, humans looked at fire as being our enemy in the forest. Smokey the Bear was there saying, only you can prevent forest fires, and telling everyone that there should not be any fire. And so for most of the 20th century, we had in the U.S. this policy that if any fire started anywhere, You stomp it out. You send in the troops. You pour water on it. You pour fire retardant on it with big planes. Do whatever you've got to do to stop that. But as the science of ecology has progressed, we've learned that fire is actually an essential element in a healthy wild ecosystem, that a lot of plants and species actually depend on there being fire to clear area for them, to make some plants need to have fire to have their seeds germinate. And so we have situations now where people who are caring for land, parklands and forest lands, actually sometimes set fires. I don't know if you've ever been out to oak openings when they do some of the controlled burns, but it's pretty cool. It's pretty dramatic. I was last summer out on the Slippery Elm Trail, way out there by Rudolph, and looked over, and this whole field was on fire. And it was just, part of burning things back. It helps keep invasive species out. It helps keep the soil fertile. But if you were out and about this past Thursday and looked up at the sky, you might have noticed that even though it wasn't terribly cloudy, the sun was this big, hazy, yellowish color. It wasn't a nice, clear sun. There was sort of this misshapen blob up in the sky. And the reason for that is that there are forest fires, huge, tremendous forest fires going on right now up in the province of Alberta, up in Canada. And I've got a map here I'm looking at off the internet from the government of Alberta, and it's showing over 20 fires, and a good half of them are out of control still. They are just burning like crazy. And I haven't been able to get a total because, Canadians are kind of understated about these things. They don't like to call attention to themselves, but community after community has been evacuated in Alberta because entire villages are being literally burned to the ground. And I'm just estimating from, looking at separate stories that each said, this small town has been evacuated and that small town's been evacuated for the past week. And it looks to me like at least 50, maybe even up to 100,000 people are displaced in Alberta right now because of these tremendous forest fires. And the smoke from those fires in Alberta has made it all the way down here to Ohio and is shading our sun. It is interesting. I mean, as an ecologist, I know the entire planet is connected. I know that everything we do affects everything else, but it still kind of hits you afresh when you look up at the sky and you're seeing, oh, that's from Alberta, Canada, and it's affecting me right down here in Bowling Green, Ohio, or Toledo, Ohio. So this is a terrible problem that they're having up there in Alberta. And but we here in Northwest Ohio are having the exact opposite problem. We have too much water. The reason those forest fires are so out of control and they're burning so hot and there's so many of them up in May and June up in Alberta is because it has been extraordinarily hot and dry up there. Just kind of off the charts in terms of heat and lack of precipitation. But down here in Northwest Ohio, we have the opposite situation where farmers have literally been unable to plant because there's been too much rain here in Northwest Ohio. There are many, many fields which have not had any corn or anything planted in them, and some of them are so wet that even the weeds can't get going. It's just I'm driving in, I go past a lot of farmers' fields, and some of them just look like mud flats. And if the farmers don't get their corn in by the 9th, then a lot of farmers aren't going to be able to plant at all, because what happens is they take out this crop insurance every year, and the deadline for getting the crop insurance is you have to have your crop in the ground, you have to have your corn in the ground by June 9th. And if you can't do that, then the insurers won't give you any insurance because then there's not enough growing season to guarantee you're going to have a harvest. So they're in a pretty critical situation here. And the problem is that the rain, even if it just stops today, that's not enough. They've got to have, there's been so much rain, the fields have to actually dry out before they can get their machinery in there. So they're going to need not just a succession of rain, they're going to need maybe 3-4 days of nice sunny weather with a good wind to dry these fields out enough so that it can support their heavy equipment when they drive on there to do their planting. It's not looking good. It's kind of a dire situation. And if you're a farmer who's in that situation, give us a call at 866-240-1065. That's 866-240-1065. I imagine a lot of farmers around here have pretty much done everything they could do short of planting their fields. I know that farmers spend a lot of time repairing things and getting stuff ready, and I think probably everybody who's got a farm right now in Northwest Ohio they fixed everything, and they're just sitting around waiting for stuff to dry out. So give us a call at 866-240-1065. I'd really like to hear from you. So we have both fire going up in Alberta, and we've got water down here. And yes, both of those things, both of these unusual weather patterns can be attributed to global warming. And I'm sure some of you are like, Joe, what are you talking about? You've got two opposite effects. How can one thing have the opposite effect in two different places? Well, the basic thing that we're doing, the cause of this massive global warming that we've got, is that we're putting carbon dioxide into the air. So when you increase the amount of carbon dioxide in the air, when you increase the percentage of it in the atmosphere, that allows the atmosphere to hold more moisture. So different gases can hold different amounts of water vapor before it gets supersaturated and the water vapor condenses out, and then you've got clouds or condensation or rain. And carbon dioxide can hold a lot more water vapor than just the other gases in the atmosphere, nitrogen and oxygen and so forth. So as you increase the percentage of carbon dioxide, you increase the percentage of water in the atmosphere. And so you're still like, well, Joe, that doesn't explain Alberta. Okay, here's the explanation for Alberta. Having more concentration of CO2 in the air actually causes evaporation to increase. So you can have the same temperature, you can have the same amount of water, same amount of rainfall, and if you've got two atmospheres, let's imagine a second Earth here, one with the original mixture of gases and one with this super high level of carbon dioxide, the same water and the same place and the same soil will evaporate much more quickly in the Earth that has the higher CO2 levels. And I actually learned this way back during the Clinton administration, because that's when the EPA was trying to alert everyone to the dangers of global warming. And I went to a presentation in Buffalo, New York, and a fellow was up there, and he had the computer models. He had the computer predictions for what's going to happen in a global warming scenario. And one of the things that they showed was they had a graph that showed the amount of rainfall, and they also predicted that the Great Lakes, ultimately, the level on the lakes will drop. Even though they're high right now, the prediction is that eventually they'll start dropping. And so I asked, well, how can you have increased rainfall and lower lake levels? And the answer was evaporation. The rate of evaporation increases so much that the lakes themselves will start to drop, will start to evaporate. So also, the water that gets put into that air, when it comes out in a much heavier deluge. It comes out in much heavier rainfall, much stronger, fiercer storms. Does anybody want to talk about the storms last night? Man, I was sitting on my front porch just watching those lightnings and the hail. We had down in Bowling Green, we had pretty good sized hail. And the thunder was continuous for, a good 2 or 3 hours, and finally I had to give up and go to bed. But just constant thunder, rumbling and flashing and lightning everywhere. It was just amazing. I don't know if you got hit that hard up here in Toledo or if you got hit that hard other places in Northwest Ohio, but Bowling Green just got deluged. And my rain gauge, I have a rain gauge in my garden, and along about 8 o'clock or so, it was at 4 inches. So I dumped it out, and then this morning it was at 3.5. So according to my rain gauge in my yard, we got 7.5 inches of rain overnight, which is just kind of amazing. And I know it was really hard because my poor tomato plants have dirt on even the uppermost leaves, which means that the raindrops were hitting so hard it was tossing dirt a good 3-4 inches up into the air, and it got on the leaves of my tomato plants. And now I have to, I'm not sure. It was too much rain even for my tomato plants. What did you see? Did you see lots of rain? Have you seen flooding where there shouldn't be flooding right now? Driving in, I saw standing water in places I've never seen standing water before. Give us a call, 866-240-1065. What were your storm experiences? And I just wanted to talk about that idea that both fire and water are increasing because of this global warming problem. So those are real problems. That's the real world. We can go into fantasy for a little while here, though. I wanted to talk about environmental movies that maybe shaped or changed your ideas about the environment, about ecology. And I've got my top 5, and I'm going to share them with you, but I'd very much like to hear your top 5, your favorite eco or environmental movies, or do you just not care about environmental movies? Do you think they're, that's just a waste of time? If something's not blowing up, it's not worth seeing. I don't know. Give me a call, 866-240-1065. So my number 5, the 5th on my top 5, is an interesting movie. Many of us watched it as children. It's the movie Bambi. Yeah, not the movie Bambi versus Godzilla. I don't know if you've ever seen that one, but no, the actual Bambi by Walt Disney. And the reason I love that movie so much in terms of the environment is that it immerses the watcher in the environment. It immerses us in a world of trees and plants and flowers. And yes, it's pure fantasy in terms of what the animals are doing and how they behave, and it's it's probably the archetypal cute maudlin children's movie, but it did basically create kind of a love of nature, kind of we got to sympathize with the animals out there in the wild. And there was a time, actually when I was a kid, the common belief was that animals didn't even have feelings. I know that doesn't make much sense in the 21st century, but back in the 60s, I heard, I heard people say, oh, animals can't actually feel pain. They don't really have emotions. And that never rang true for me. I mean, their brains, even though they're nowhere near as hugely developed as human brains, they've got all the same parts, and they work in the same ways. They use the same chemicals, and the same parts of a mammalian brain get activated by the same sorts of experiences. I mean, we know all that now, but back in the 50s and the 60s, they were saying, oh, animals are just animals. They're called dumb animals. They don't feel pain. We don't have to worry about any of that. Bambi, the movie Bambi, anthropomorphized all those animals, but it did sort of show that there's a commonality of experience between humans and animals. I mean, we had birth, and everybody was happy about the births. We had deaths, and everybody was broken up about the deaths. And that happens in the wild, too. I mean, it happens with humans. It happens with animals. It was a good movie in that way. That was my number 5. All right, now number 4, you're going to be like, oh yes, of course. Number 4 is a blatantly pro-environment movie. I mean, it's just it kind of hits you over the head with it. And in fact, I think there was a fair bit of hitting over the head in this movie. It's another children's movie. It's another animated movie. It's Fern Gully. Remember that movie? There might be some kids today, or some of the younger listeners, some of the millennials may not have even seen Fern Gully. But Fern Gully was this fantasy story about a bunch of fairies. They're living in a deep forest, and there's this evil spirit creature called Hastur that wants to destroy the forest and the fairies and all and everything good. And these humans come along with this huge automated mining machine or deforestation machine that just kind of plows through a forest, turning the trees in front of it into 2x4s that it spits out the back. And of course, since this is a cartoon, it works very well. It's very simple. And there's one guy, his name is Zach, his job is to go put the X's on the trees that are going to get cut down, and pretty much puts his X's on every single tree. That seems to be his job. So he actually gets changed by the fairies. He gets shrunk down to fairy size, and he has to live with the fairies. He has to survive in the rainforest as a 3-inch high, maybe 4-inch high person. And it's just, it's a fantasy adventure. But it's gorgeous, like Bambi was. It's really a feast for the eyes. And it was really, the pro-environment message was really heavy-handed, but it was still a good movie. I really enjoyed Fern Gully, and I made sure my kids watched it. Did you ever see it? Did you think it was over the top? What do you think? Fern Gully, number 4. Now, number 3, we're making our transition here from animated movies into live-action movies, and so what better movie to make that transition than Avatar? Avatar's a mix of live-action and animated, and some really powerful performances by Sigourney Weaver. I really love her as an actress, and a lot of other good performances. The story, again, is a bit heavy-handed. It's a bit like us versus them. It's a little simplistic. Everybody's a little simplistic. I mean, the element that they're fighting over is called unobtainium, which is like, okay, yeah, this is just a fantasy. But again, another really gorgeous movie, and the animators, the people who made that movie, tried to match the complexity of an actual ecosystem, and it's a really brilliant attempt. And I know a lot of people, a lot of environmentalists for whom Avatar is like not just their number one environmental movie, it's the number one movie ever made on the planet, and they watch it over and over again. Are you one of those people? Are you really, really in tune with the message of Avatar? Let me know, 866-240-1065. So this is a question that I want to ask. Now, Avatar is a movie that kind of went into the whole military thing. It turned into animals versus the military versus machinery movie. And in the end, of course, if you've ever watched Avatar, and hope this isn't a spoiler, the animals win. The nature wins out over technology, and the natives of this planet, where the humans are setting up mining operations to mine unobtainium, end up driving the humans off the planet, and that's considered the happy ending. They are working on Avatar 2. It's going to come out in December of 2020, so looks interesting. I'm planning to go see it. Would you go see Avatar 2, or do you think that's not really interesting to you? Avatar 1, the first Avatar movie, was an amazing success, and I think it touched a yearning a lot of us have, because I think all of us want to see the ecosystems of the planet get healthy again. They want to see, they don't want us to use our technology to destroy the environment. And here's a planet, a fantasy world, where that doesn't happen. I mean, here on good old planet Earth, so often we see that the technology develops to the point where they can harvest resources so fast and so hard that they cause the collapse. They cause the collapse of fisheries. They cause the collapse of forests. And, Avatar kind of says, in a fantasy world, the animals would have a voice in this, and they'd be able to say, okay, stop, you're done. So that's my number 3, Avatar. 866-240-1065. What's your favorite eco movie? Now, number 2 might also surprise you. Number 2 is the movie Apollo 13. And you're like, Joe, that's a space movie. That's an astronaut movie. What does that have to do with the ecology or the environment? Well, in that movie, the astronauts on Apollo 13 are living in an environment where we humans have tried to mimic what the natural ecosystems provide. Those astronauts have to live in a world where there's temperature, where gas levels are controlled, and that has to all be done by humans, by technology. And Apollo 13 demonstrates just how fragile and how poor a substitute the human version is compared to the planet. One of the big problems that they have on Apollo 13 that they have to solve or die is actually the buildup of carbon dioxide. They are there in their space capsule, and they've got these little dials that show the level of carbon dioxide. And because the main capsule fails, the carbon dioxide isn't being scrubbed out of the atmosphere, and you see that little dial inching its way up. And if it inches past a certain point, all the astronauts will die because there's too much CO2 in their atmosphere. And it like hovers, it touches that point and comes back down a couple times. It's an extremely suspenseful movie. They do, of course, eventually figure out how to filter out the CO2, and they survive. But that scene where, we're all on the edge of our seats and we're watching these guys fight for survival, and we're seeing that needle moving up, inching up, I kind of feel like that's exactly what we're doing now. That's what's happening on Earth. This past couple of weeks, they've been announcing record, extremely high levels of carbon dioxide at the observatory down in Hawaii, where they measure atmospheric carbon dioxide. And we are those astronauts in Apollo 13. We are on a little spaceship. I know it's the planet Earth, but compared to like Jupiter, we're tiny. And of course, compared to the size of the whole solar system, we're almost so small we don't exist. So we're on this tiny little planet, tiny little spaceship going through the air. And yes, our level of carbon dioxide, our needle is inching up. And unless we do something about it, it's going to cross that line and everything will collapse. It'll collapse in fire and water. We know because it's happening. We could see it happening. And we've seen it coming for decades. The problem is that the scientists back when they were first started raising the alarm were like, oh, we've got 100 years. But they grossly miscalculated, because humans, if they hear something's 100 years off, tend not to worry about it. But it's clear now that we don't have anything like 100 years. We probably at this point have 5 or 10 years. So maybe. But I've said it before, my belief is we're caught in a positive feedback loop, and that we're at a super accelerating rate of carbon dioxide getting put into the atmosphere. And as support of it, the Alberta wildfires, I mean, as those trees burn, they put millions of tons of CO2 in the air. And then until they start to recover, those forests are no longer carbon dioxide sinks. They no longer absorb carbon dioxide. They actually give it off. There is a point where they actually absorb it very quickly once they start recovering, but that's years off. So anyway, Apollo 13 was number 2. And now, finally, I know that you're all in deep suspense here. My number 1 environmental movie, is the movie Never Cry Wolf. Have you seen it? Never Cry Wolf. It's based on a book by Farley Marwatt. And it's a story of a biologist who goes up north into Canada. And the reason he's up there is to study wolf populations, because the belief then was that the wolves were just eating all the caribou. And the government cared about caribou because there was a huge market for hunting caribou. And so they were afraid that their caribou hunting market was being wiped out by wolves, and so the government wanted to just institute a program of eliminating all the wolves, so that as a formality they sent a biologist up there to say, yes, the caribou are eating wolves. Well, what happens is he gets up there and he's alone. This is a solo mission, and he's supposed to inventory how many caribou the wolves are eating. And he's all by himself. He doesn't have any equipment, no snowmobiles or anything. And he's like, how the heck am I supposed to do this? So what he does is he sets up there on the tundra, and he arrives at the end of the winter. So he arrives in the snow and the ice, but he sets up camp, and he finds a wolf mated pair, an alpha pair of wolves with cubs, and he sort of sets up camp right next to them, and he just watches them. And as far as he could tell, they're not eating any caribou. As far as he could tell, they weren't eating anything. But as he watched them, he started to notice that they were actually eating mice and voles, the little rodents running around in the tundra, which when the snows melt up there, they just explode. Their populations just go like crazy. And he is the first one who realizes that a big carnivore like a wolf can live off eating just a tiny little critter like a vole. And there's a funny scene. He actually knows that if he takes this back to his 1950s scientist people, they're not going to believe him. They're just going to say, no way can a 200-pound wolf live off mice. They've got to be eating big things like caribou. So he sets up an experiment where he feeds himself. He lives off of mice and voles for like a month up there. And it's really, it sounds gross, but it's treated with a lot of humor. It's actually quite hilarious when you watch that movie. But he proves that, yes, a big animal like a human can live off of just mice. And he has a whole bunch of other experiences there. He runs into some native people who live up there who know a lot about the wolves, and he actually learns from them. And it's all shot out in the wilderness. It's really gorgeous, another beautiful movie. And that's the movie I go to whenever I'm feeling really down, whenever I'm feeling really sick. I watched, in 2016, I ran for U.S. Senate, and on the Green Party line. Oh, and let me say, my name's Joe DeMar. I'm the political director of the Ohio Green Party. But on this show, I don't speak for the Green Party. I'm speaking only for myself. And you folks would speak for yourself, too, at 866-240-1065 when you call in. Anyway, I ran for Senate, and it was just too much of a strain. I ended up having what's called it's not a heart attack. It was a sudden cardiac arrest, because it turns out I've got this genetic heart condition that had not shown up before. I'd gone my whole life not even knowing about it, but somehow the stress of running for office for a year and a half brought this out, and I ended up having a sudden cardiac arrest. And so I had some recovery time there. And so this is the movie that I watched. Never Cry Wolf is the movie that I watched several times as I was recovering from that, and it really helped. So if you're feeling kind of down, depressed, if you want just really a beautiful movie that really gets in with nature and has a fantastic message, and it's got humor, it's got drama, it's got everything. So I would say Never Cry Wolf is the movie. It's hard to find. It was a Disney movie, and they don't always release it. It's hard to find, but it's worth the search. If you could find it, I'd say do it. All right, so now it's time for us to hear from our fantastic sponsors. And excuse me for just a second while I drink a little bit of water here. Okay, oops. All right, so our sponsors include the Wood County Park District. The Wood County Park District is a natural resources conservation agency. They protect natural spaces, maintain quality green spaces, provide engaging programming, and they teach people to love and respect nature, restore wildlife habitats, and lead outdoor adventures. And I just got a whole new list of adventures from the Wood County Park Districts. In fact, I got a list of so many things that I actually can't read them all yet. So I'm just going to read the ones that are upcoming this coming week. So if you're looking for something to do this week, if you want to get out into some nature or just have an experience with nature, this is a good week to do it, because the Wood County Park District is just it's kind of mind-boggling how many activities they're offering this week. So we'll jump right in here with Monday, tomorrow, 9 to 11 a.m. at the Carter Historic Farm. They're going to be planting some of the fruits and vegetables that will be used later in the year in their farm programming. That's at the Carter Historic Farm at 18331 Carter Road down in Bowling Green. So they need help planting the crops that the historic farm is going to be harvesting later in the fall. So if you want to do that, and if you want to do any volunteering for any of these programs, you go to wcparks.galaxydigital.com. That's wcparks.galaxydigital.com. And you can sign up there to be a volunteer with the Wood County Parks District. Now, if you want to just enjoy something, again, every Monday from June through August, 4 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. at the WW Night Nature Preserve. That's at 29530 White Road in Perrysburg. They're going to have canoeing, so you can enjoy a float on the pond at the WW Night Nature Preserve. An instructor will be there to teach you boat safety and boating skills. They'll provide the boats and the life jackets and the paddles, and everything is provided on a first-come, first-served basis, so the sooner you can get there from 4 to 7:30 p.m., the better. And if there's somebody else in the canoes, you can just take a walk around on the trail until it's your turn. And the last Monday of every month will feature kayaks along with the canoes. So you can register for that program at wcparks.org. Then the very next day, June 4th, at the Cedar Creeks Preserve, which is at 4575 Walbridge Road in Northwood, they're going to be doing volunteering. They're going to pull up the invasive species like garlic mustard. Volunteers will be provided bags and gloves. No experience necessary. That's good because, it's kind of a drag to have to submit a resume to pull up weeds. Luckily, you don't. But all you would have to do is go to wcparks.galaxydigital.com. Also, on Tuesday, another volunteering opportunity at Otsego Park at 20,000 West River Road in Bowling Green. And they're going to be cleaning up the debris in the streams that would otherwise flow right down into the Maumee River. So they're going to provide all the cleaning supplies. And again, that's a volunteer opportunity, so that's at wcparks.galaxydigital.com. And on Wednesday, they're going to have a wild ride bike tour on the Slippery Elm Trail, which starts at 1014, this is going to be at 1014 South Maple Street, Bowling Green. So then it says here, bikers and runners aren't the only creatures that call the Slippery Elm Trail home. Join in on this non-drop group bike ride and learn about spot wildlife and habitats that surround the Slippery Elm Trail. The leader of that's going to be a fella named Craig Spicer. And on Thursday, I know every single day, it's amazing. On Thursday, they're going to be planting native plants at the Rudolph Savannah, 10330 Rudolph Road in Rudolph. That's a very interesting park. They've got some huge trees in there, and they're going to plant native plants from the Wood County Park District's greenhouse out there, and that's a volunteer opportunity, again, at wcparks.galaxydigital.com. And on the same night, from 6 to 8 p.m., they're going to be out at the greenhouses, which are on Oregon Road at the J.C. Ruthinger Memorial Preserve. So you can volunteer there to help add to or maintain or harvest seeds from the native plants. So that's Thursday, 6 to 8. They're going to be getting volunteers at the greenhouses, and then but 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. they're going to be out planting some of those plants at the Rudolph Savannah. And finally, there's also the EcoLit book group meeting on Thursday. That's a monthly meeting of people who read books about the environment and get together and talk about them. That's going to be at the W.W. Knight Nature Preserve at 29530 White Road in Perrysburg. So for this meeting this Thursday, please read Desert Solitaire by Edward Abbey. And you can register for this one or any of them. The discussion leader is going to be Cheryl Lukowski. She's a senior lecturer at BGSU English Department and an Ohio Certified Volunteer Naturalist. So, again, you'd register at wcparks.org. Or for any of these, you can call their headquarters at 419-353-1897. And just two more. I know your calendar's probably already filled up here, but there's the Hiking for Health series, which is going to be Friday, June 7th and Friday, August 23rd. On the 7th, it's going to be at the Black Swamp Preserve, which is on 1014 Maple Street in Bowling Green. And on the 23rd, it'll be at Otsego Park, 20,000 West River Road in Bowling Green. And you're going to join a naturalist for exercise and the wonder of watching seasonal changes. You sign up for 1 week, or actually there's 3 of them. So you can there's also one June 7th. Okay, well, anyway, you sign up for all 3. The leader's Jim Witter, and you sign up at wcparks.org. And the final one is going to be June 8th, which is next Saturday, July 13th and August 10th. They're called Self-Care Saturdays. And there's something actually called forest therapy, because there's a lot of research, a lot of medical research with clinical studies and double blinds and following all the scientific procedures that show that by being out in nature, you reduce stress, you could reduce depression, you could reduce anxiety, reduce blood pressure and heart rate. It also can help treat obsessive-compulsive disorder and ADHD. It can reduce the symptoms of those things, as well as increase your sense of well-being, immunity, mental clarity, creativity, and concentration. And so this is a program which has a cost. It costs $15. The program facilitator is Jim Witter, and you'd register for that at www.wcparks.org or call them at 419-353-1897. But $15 is a lot less expensive than any of the medications I've heard of to treat all those things that you can treat, you can help, you can improve the symptoms of simply by getting out into nature. And those are all at the W.W. Knight Nature Preserve. So that's what we've got from the Wood County Park District, and we're very grateful to have them as a sponsor. Our other sponsor for this hour is DeMar Consulting. DeMar Consulting is a computer consulting company. They will come out to your home, and they will help you with whatever computer problem you have. Maybe your computer's not accessing your printer. Maybe you can't reach your email. Maybe that your antiviral software isn't updating for some reason. Whatever your computer problem, you can call DeMar Consulting, and they'll come out and help you. They specialize in helping people of, shall I say, well, I could say my generation, a somewhat older generation that maybe don't really grasp computers the way some younger folks do. Although even a high school kid can have trouble with their laptop that DeMar Consulting might be able to help you with. They'll come out, but they're very patient. They'll explain things, and they'll walk you through whatever you need to solve your problem, and they'll do it at a very reasonable rate. So you can give them a call at 419-973-3000, or you can find them on the web at demarconsulting.com. That's DEMARE, the word consulting.com. So give them a call today. All right, so we have already covered a lot of ground, and I promise last week I actually forgot to get to the letter from the future. And so, if it gets to be like 5 till or 10 till and I haven't read it yet, give me a call and remind me, because I have it, and my great-great-granddaughter Marie I takes the time to write it every week. So this week I will definitely get it to you. But we need to talk about something terrible. We need to talk about House Bill 6. And one more pause as I drink a little bit more water. Okay, House Bill 6 passed the House this past week. And a more egregious example of crony capitalism I have never seen in my life. It was amazing. House Bill 6 started out, they still call it the Clean Air program, but it started out as they marketed it as something that's going to increase like solar panels and windmills, and the thing was they said, and also we're going to give some money to the nuclear plants, Davis, Bessie, and Perry. Well, they had over a month of hearings, and they had dozens of businesses and organizations and people get up there, and it was about 3-1 in opposition, because as part of what they're doing, they are eliminating the efficiency programs in Ohio and the renewable energy standards, which support windmills and solar panels and so forth. And so they slash those, and they replace them with a charge on every Ohioan's bill that goes straight to Davis, Bessie, and Perry. Well, it goes to their owners. But so after hearing all this testimony saying, don't do that, we've got to save the efficiency standards, we've got to save this, and nuclear power is not the answer. What they did is they doubled down, and they made it an even worse bill. They stripped out every semblance of pro-environmentalness, and now this bill supports coal plants. It gives two coal plants, one in Ohio, one in Indiana. It gives Ohio ratepayers money to 2 coal plants as well as the 2 nuke plants, and that's it. That is now all it does. Well, in addition to eliminating the efficiency standards and the renewable energy portfolio standards. And so it was kind of amazing. I was watching these Republican legislators get up there, and they were shouting, and they were crying, and they were waving their arms and just yelling, and they cut off the Democrats that were trying to introduce amendments. They cut them off brutally, and they're just like, no, we are doing this, period. And you have to look at that in the context of all the millions of dollars that First Energy has given to these legislators in terms of campaign contributions. So, once you realize that explains everything, because almost everyone I tell about this bill, they're like, what? They're getting rid of wind turbines? They're getting rid of solar panels? What? And they're funding nukes, and they're funding coal plants? It doesn't make any sense unless you look at the money. Once you look at the money, then it makes perfect sense. But, and they threw up a whole nother barrier to wind power development, a referendum process, which is it was literally designed to prevent any wind farms from happening in Ohio. And so a whole bunch of groups are now up in arms about it. And in fact, they've called for protests. They've called for protests in Toledo, Columbus, and Akron, which is the headquarters of First Energy. And those protests are going to happen this coming week. They're going to be Monday, June 3rd, from 4:30 to 6:30 at 300 Madison Avenue in Toledo. That's the old Toledo Edison building. Wednesday, June 5th, from 4:30 to 6:30 at the Ohio State House at the corner of 3rd and State. And Friday, June 7th, from 4:30 to 6:30 in Akron at the corner of West Market and Frank. And so a whole bunch of different organizations are calling for these protests because, frankly, they participated in the legislative process. They got up there, they testified, they had incredible documentation for their testimony, and they were completely ignored. Everything that the environmental groups said and suggested was completely ignored and wiped out of this legislation. In fact, it was there in the beginning, and the Republicans that are controlling the process deliberately removed it all. So it's an incredible just announcement to the world that Ohio is going to turn around and go back, that Ohio is going to go back to the energy of the 50s, the coal and the nukes, and we're going to turn our backs on the wind and the sun. And the 21st century, we're going to try to crawl down into a hole as a state and hide in terms of energy policies. It's just incredible. So I'm going to be at those protests, all three of them, the one in Monday in Toledo, Wednesday in Columbus, and Friday in Akron. Because once you've tried to participate in the legitimate legal process and you have failed completely, then what choice do you have? You have to take to the streets, because most Ohioans still don't even know that this is happening. So we've got to let people know, got to get out there and let people know what's going on. So that is kind of depressing, but I have a letter here from my great-great-granddaughter, which is always kind of a pick-me-up, because things are much better in the year 2299. We figured out all this stuff. We've shut down all the things that need to be shut down and built up what needs to be built up. And so my great-great-granddaughter has written me a letter, and here it goes. Dear great-great-grandpa, 2299 is proving to be a crazy year for me. I've broken off my engagement with Igor. He wanted me to give up my work here, disposing of your time's nuclear wastes. I can't do that. My job is just too important. It was amazing and kind of magical walking with the Sami tribe for 4 days straight, following the migrating caribou herds with Igor. Things that happened to me and that I saw on the trail still sometimes jump out into my memory, distracting me from what I'm doing. Sleeping in a lavabo was incredibly relaxing, and I had dreams more vivid than I've ever had in my life before. But one experience I had decided it for me. There was a young reindeer having trouble keeping up with the herd. Igor caught it, and using an ultrasound, he looked at its heart. Turns out it had a hole in its heart. Igor explained to me that it was caused by radioactive cesium from the Chernobyl nuclear disaster back in your time. Cesium-137 has a half-life of 30 years. So 10 half-lives is 300 years. So there's still a little bit of cesium left in my time, still causing disease in the herd, and there will be for another 20 years or so. That's what convinced me my work here is too important to give up. I saw the video of you explaining to the Ohio State legislators about the radioactive isotopes, and it is incomprehensible that they were still willing to try to keep nuclear power going after that. Every school child in 2299 understands how important it is to avoid radioactive exposure. Why didn't the adults in your government in your time know this? Anyway, I made my decision and broke it to Igor, ending our engagement. He didn't show it much, but I could tell he was heartbroken. I'm not doing too well myself, but at last I have clarity. Now, thanks for listening, great-great-grandpa. Keep fighting for a green future. Those of us in the future are depending on all of you. Don't let us down. All right. Well, kind of a moving letter from Marie this time around. What do you think? We're at some crazy times here. We've got fire, we've got water, we've got radiation, we've got all kinds of things happening to the environment, and it's all happening much faster than the scientists predicted. It's all happening much harder than a lot of us thought it would. And I think particularly those of us in Ohio, those of us in Northwest Ohio especially, we kind of thought, I think in the back of all our minds as all this global warming catastrophe stuff was described, we kind of thought, we're not going to suffer too much from that. We're at a good place. We've got a whole continent around us. We're pretty much near the middle of the continent. So we're not going to be hit by the sea level rise that's going to wipe out places like New York and Florida, and New York City, and Florida. And we have the lake. We have Lake Erie near us, which actually moderates our local temperatures, our regional weather. And so we're going to be protected from too bad of a drought. And so, and we don't have we're not surrounded by these deep forests that are in so many other places like Alberta. So we're not going to have the catastrophic forest fires they're having in Alberta. But I think what we've learned this past week is that a disaster can be as simple as too much rain. It can be as simple as just being unable to get out into your fields and plant. And we have storage of grain. We have a reserve in the U.S. of grain and food. But we can't afford very many seasons without any plantings. One thing, there's flooding all over the central United States right now, and I've been looking at some pretty dramatic pictures, some pretty dramatic drone videos. And one thing that I saw was a farm in Kansas, which is completely flooded, and all the farm buildings are underwater or have water up over them. The farmhouse, which is up on a little hill, was the only thing that wasn't flooded at this one particular farm. But what had happened was that the floodwaters had gotten into the grain silos. And all the grain in there, all that dried corn and dried wheat, absorbed the floodwaters and actually blew out the sides of the silos. And so you had these collapsed silos sitting on top of these tremendous piles of grain, last year's grain, and they were little islands in this water-covered farm. And so, it's kind of like that story in the Bible where the fellas in the New Testament, where there's a fella who's thinking about his farms and his wealth, and he's saying, I had a really good harvest, and should I build another silo? It's a lot of money, but maybe I should invest in that because I've got so much grain. And God says to him, guess what, fella? Time's up. Stop worrying about grains and silos. You're done. Your time on this earth is over. And so, we here in Ohio, in the middle of America, we hear about these terrible global warming enhanced disasters that are happening all over the world. And we I think there's a tendency to say, well, okay, that's terrible over there, but that's not going to bother me in Toledo. It's not going to bother me in Columbus. But the answer is, I'm afraid nowhere on the planet is going to be safe. And so we've got to do something about it. So I'm hoping I'll see you guys at one of these protests. And I also wanted to just say I'm incredibly grateful for every minute I'm on the air with you. This is Joe DeMar with For a Green Future, signing off.
To make this country run, but that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done.